Hi guys, I hope that you're really well. It's gone really cold. We're having up to -3 this evening, so I'm a little bit wrapped up. So listen, one of the most common videos that I'm asked for is about the problems with de and a. So I always respond to people, répondre. So I always respond to people that it's such a massive topic that it would be really difficult to do it in one video. However, I'm going to have a go just to do some of the main problems that do come up with de and a, because I just think this would actually help a lot of you, because I did this in a lesson situation today with the lovely Nick, and I just think it would be quite good for some of you who are learning. And if you're watching this video, then you'll see that I've just done a series of advanced videos with the lovely Nina, and it's fair to give people something who are at the other end of the learning spectrum. But we can always benefit from a little cleanup and a check anyway. So in no particular order, let's get going. So de is a preposition and a is a preposition. So this means that it will commonly come in front of a noun, an object. So if you said things like from the house, to the house, in the house, by the house, on top of the house, underneath the house, in the dog, by the dog, near the dog, to the dog, with the dog. These are prepositions. They're in a position prior to a noun or an object. So de and a are the king and the queen of the prepositions in French. They are the king and the queen of the prepositions. I'm not saying who's more important, a king or a queen. I will leave that with you. So let's do some common problems. Problem number 1. De means many things. Okay, so de can be from, can be of, and can be about. Yep. So for example, if you said I am talking about the situation, je parle de la situation, we have more complicated compound prepositions like à propos de, or au sujet de, which happen to end in a de, but je parle de la situation, so I'm talking about the situation. All right, so it means about. It also means of. I have need of the solution. J'ai besoin de la solution. So the word de there is an of. J'ai besoin de la solution. We also have it meaning from. From. Okay, he came from the pharmacy. He came back. Il est venu de la pharmacie. So the same preposition can be like a from, can be an of, and can be an about. Okay, so that's situation number 1 with de. Next problem with de. De will join and a will join. So de plus le will give me a du. Yeah, this I will pop underneath. De plus le will give me a du. Du becomes du. De and le becomes du. De and les becomes des. De and la remains de la. So for example, I am coming from the market. Je viens du marché, from the market. I am coming, from the I am coming from the, the shops. Je rentre, je viens des magasins, not de les magasins. And again, de and la will stay where they are. This would be the same if it was of the or any of the other versions of de. So for example, if you say he is talking about the situation, il parle de la situation, il parle de les enfants, il parle des enfants. So again, this situation is going to repeat in whatever version of de you are using. If you have got a the word after it, le masculine or les plural, de plus le and de plus les will give you du and des respectively. Okay? If your word le isn't being used to be the word the, if you are using the word le or les as a pronoun replacement of a him, an it, or a they, or a them, then you will not form the join. So for example, I've just seen, je viens de voir. I've just seen him, je viens de le voir. We don't join these words together, okay? I've just seen them, je viens de les voir. Because in this example, le and les are pronouns. They are taking the place of the him, the it, the them, the they, etc. Okay? So the same joining business will happen with a. So a and le will become o, a and les will become au, aux plural. So I speak to the girl, je parle à la fille. I speak to the boy, je parle au garçon. I speak to the girls, je parle aux filles. Okay? So our second issue is the fact that it can join. Okay? It can join. De and le become du. De and les becomes des. A and le becomes au. A and les become au. Little tip, if your word is masculine, and you think you need a du or an o, but your word begins with a vowel, a lot of the time that won't need to happen. So for example, if you say from the hotel, let's go with de l'hôtel à l'hôtel. Even though it's a masculine word, you're not going to say au hôtel or du hôtel. So that's another little problem with de and a that we see all the time with learners. Okay? Our next situation with de and a, I would probably go with, a really common one, is 4 really key verbs that are going to use those expressions. So, décider de, to decide to. Now, if you use decide, you don't need a de. I've decided, j'ai décidé. Okay? But if you said, I've decided to do something else, alors j'ai décidé de faire quelque chose. I've tried to do something, j'ai essayé de faire quelque chose. I've started to do something, j'ai commencé à faire quelque chose. Now, I've continued to do something, j'ai continué à. You can use continuer de, but I think it's nicer French to say continuer à. So that would give you a nice little block. The 2 with C, these common ones, will use an à, and the D and the E will use a de. You could combine. I've started to try. J'ai commencé à essayer de le. You know, you could end up with multiple versions of this, okay? So that is another problem. That's a really, really common thing to have. I started to, j'ai commencé à faire, j'ai continué à faire, j'ai décidé de faire, j'ai essayé de faire. That's another really common problem with de and à. Okay? Another problem with de and à. If you use a verb which has de and à, you don't need to use le, la, and les for the pronoun it. So, we've already talked about how we can use de in an of way. Yeah. So if we talk about the verb penser, to think. So penser, think of or think about. 2 different prepositions in English. In English, what do you think about the situation? I'm thinking about you, Luke. What do you think of the situation? I'm thinking of you, Luke. It's not the of or the about which is going to make the difference here. It's the that's going to make the difference here. It's the fact in French that if you are asking someone their opinion, or someone is giving an opinion, then it will be penser de. And if you are just merely coming into someone's mind, then penser à. So if you said, Luke, what do you think about the situation in France? Qu'est-ce que tu penses de la situation en France? Qu'est-ce que tu penses de la situation en France? That's a de. So what do you think? So I'm thinking about you, Luke. Je pense à toi. Je pense à toi. So consequently, if you then need the pronouns, so you know pronouns, you don't understand those videos are there. Most of the time, directly will be le and la and les. So for example, I do, je fais, I do it, je le fais, I eat, je le mange, je la mange, feminine, je les mange. If your verb were to use a de, or if your verb were to use an a, you cannot use de, you cannot use le, la, les. You need to use en for the de verbs and i, letter y, for the a verbs. So for example, qu'est-ce que tu penses de la situation? What do you think of it? Qu'est-ce que tu en penses? And if you don't understand that, go to my page, type pronouns or en, and it will give you that. Qu'est-ce que tu en penses? What do you think about it? I'm thinking of it. J'y pense, because in this situation, je pense à la situation. The a is replaced with an e, so j'y pense. So that is another de and a problem which comes up, which is you cannot, with verbs that use de and a, use le, la, les pronouns. You have to use an en or an e respectively. Now that could be for verbs that just have de and a, or it could be for verbs which have de and a, and, as if you've not got enough to do, a reflexive before it. So that brings me to my next category. There are some verbs which use reflexives and prepositions. Now I call those ABC verbs because basically it reminds you that you need 3 things. So, se souvenir de, s'habituer à, for example. So a lot of people will understand a lot of this grammar, but they just struggle to remember the difference between de and a. So some people watching this video will go, what do you mean? Why is there a problem with the difference between de and a? De is obviously from and a is to. I don't understand how there'd be a problem. But when you pop them in other bits of grammar, they sometimes get mixed up. So one of those usages is in an ABC verb. So verbs that are pronominal verbs, which then have the preposition. So the idea there is that a is going towards something, and de is more of an of or a from it. So for example, to get used to, s'habituer à. So I'm going to get used to the situation. Je vais m'habituer à la situation. I'm going to sign up to the gym. Je vais m'inscrire à. So m'inscrire au gymnase. Notice once again, a and le become au. Yeah. I'm going to what should we do? To deal with, s'occuper de. So to occupy yourself, kind of you're not going towards a thing. I'm going to deal with this thing. I'm going to occupy myself of this thing. Je vais m'occuper de. I'm going to get rid of. Je vais me débarrasser de. So often if you're not going towards the thing, you're getting rid of it. So often with these phrasal verbs that use de and a, you normally can work out which one you need. But common ones, like I said, s'habituer à, yeah, se débarrasser de, se souvenir de, s'occuper de. Yeah, you will come across the same ones again and again and again. So that in itself is a really useful thing. For the more advanced amongst you that want to do those verbs and then bring in an a and a de, with the pronoun, guess what? The de ones use en and the at ones use a. So I'm going to get used to the situation. Je vais m'habituer à la situation. Je vais m'y habituer. I've popped my letter Y in there. I remember... the situation, je me souviens de la situation. I remember it, je m'en souviens. Okay? So there's something else to be practicing if you're not sure of the de or the a, how it would work there. Next thing, and if we're still not addressing your point of, yeah, Luke, I know all of this, I'm just not sure whether we use de or a in certain situations, this is now getting into a little bit more into that territory. So another situation that is common to mess up on is whether you use de or a before an infinitive. Okay, so for example, the problem with this is that your mouth will have heard de plus the infinitive and a plus the infinitive. So there's a couple of ideas here that really work. One of them is de is like a trampoline. It's a little trampoline. It's the most common one. So if you suddenly find yourself in an infinitive out of nowhere, okay, and why am I in this infinitive? Why am I in this to form of the verb? And before it, you didn't have any other first verb, because normally verbs go from the first verb into the second verb in the infinitive. So, je veux venir, I want to come. Je veux parler, I want to speak. Il va venir, he's going to come. Il va parler, he's going to speak. If you suddenly find yourself in the to form, the infinitive form, and there wasn't a first verb to get you up there, so for example, I am happy to come, I'm happy to speak. What normally bounces you up there after an adjective, not all adjectives, is the preposition de. So think of de as like a trampoline. Boing, boing. So for example, I'm happy to speak. Je suis content de parler. Yeah, I'm happy to speak to him. Je suis content de lui parler. Lovely. So that in itself is a big solution. Yeah, not je suis content à parler or something like this. Okay. The next idea with de and a would be whether to use de or a after an impersonal expression or something similar. And we did this reasonably recently the other day in a video which talked about the differences between il est and c'est. But the general idea is if you're at the beginning of your expression and you haven't yet said what it is, so if you said something like, it's difficult to find a good teacher. Il est difficile de trouver un bon prof. Okay? A good teacher, yeah, okay. Difficult to find. That would be, whatever, un bon prof. Yeah, whatever your sentence is, difficile à trouver. Yeah, un bon prof est difficile à trouver. Because the infinitive there is the end of the idea. You've already said what it is. So, for example, it's easy to open the packet. Il est facile, or c'est facile in more oral French. C'est facile d'ouvrir le paquet. Yeah, This packet is easy to open. You've already given me the idea. Ce paquet, you've given me the main thing. Ce paquet est facile à ouvrir. Okay, so that would go to an a. Okay, any other little common de and a tricks that we can get our head round? So we've talked about penser à for an opinion. Penser de for an opinion, and penser à to go into somebody's you're just coming into somebody's mind. And a nice little trick there is, as silly as it sounds, an opinion is a weightier thing, it's a bigger thing. And de is 2 letters, and a is 1 letter. So at the risk of being patronising, which is the shorter word? A. So you were just in my mind. I didn't have an opinion, I just thought about you. Je pensais à. Yeah? A. Okay? We've talked about the different usages of de. We've talked about how it's a from, it's an about, and it's an of. And we've spoken about how de and a will both link with le and les if the word is a de. I know some other little problems with de. We can use what I used to call the gabby error. This was somebody that I teach who used to make this mistake all the time and now hopefully doesn't. So the gabby error with de is when you've got a negative usage of a verb that you don't then need an article. So for example, I have a sister, j'ai une sœur. I don't actually have a sister, so I haven't got a sister, je n'ai pas de sœur, rather than je n'ai pas une sœur. So I haven't got any money, je n'ai pas d'argent. I haven't got an idea, je n'ai pas d'idée. We use pas and de, pas and de. There isn't any class, il n'y a pas de cours. So we will use the de commonly when there's a negative, it's not, the verb isn't doing anything to that adjective, to that noun. That will be a de. So don't forget that you can replace that with aucun or aucune a lot of the time. So I haven't got an idea. Je n'ai aucune idée. I have no idea. Je n'ai aucun problème. I have no problem. J'ai pas de problème. J'ai pas d'idée. Je n'ai aucun argent. Je n'ai pas d'argent. So you can swap that for an aucun, but that is the de mistake that will commonly be used. The next thing with de, a massive error that happens, is when you guys use de before a noun. And can I remind you that when it's a word of quantity, so more than, plus de, fewer than, often said in common English less than, but really fewer than, if it's plural. So moins de, too many, trop de, very few, peu de, if you've got a quantity word, then you go straight from the de, straight into the noun. So for example, he has lots of friends. Il a beaucoup d'amis, hence il a beaucoup d'amis, Joy. In any other usage in French, when you suddenly need to bring in a noun, you will need an article. So if not an a, then the or a some. So for example, journalists, I shouldn't be spiteful about journalists. Let's say chocolate is delicious. We're speaking about all chocolate, so le chocolat est délicieux. So if in English you have the word the, translate the word the into French, le la lait. If you have the word some, use, now again, this is using de, this is the partitive, so du for the masculine things, de la for the feminine things, des for the plural things, des, and de l, if it starts the vowel. So for example, some coffee, du café, some cream, de la crème, some children, des enfants, some people, des personnes, some water, de l'eau, because it starts with the vowel. So that we'll call the partitive. That's basically some and then, well, the some water. That is basically when we're going to use the word some. So if you hear the word the in your English, you're going to need le, la, or les, or l. If you hear the word some in your English, you're going to translate, you'll need du, de la, or des, or dl. But if you don't hear either, and this is covered in a video in much more detail called les versus des, you will need one of those. So for example, cherries are delicious. Les cerises sont délicieuses, because I'm talking about all cherries. I'm going to go and buy cherries. Je vais acheter des cerises, because I'm not talking about all cherries, although I can eat a lot. I'm speaking generally. So you will come across this de word commonly for this. So in other words, a common noun normally has des or les rammed up it on the left-hand side if you use a noun out of nowhere. So look, there are journalists. Regarde, il y a des journalistes. You wouldn't just say il y a journalistes. So this means all of you, and I'm talking about you, Susan Monroe, even people who are very advanced, all of you want to say, get these the wrong way around. So if you say, in other words, you can use a noun with a de before it, so long as before it you've had something referring to its quantity. So for example, lots of peaches, beaucoup de pêches. There are peaches available if you want some. Il y a des pêches. I would still need to come in with that. So a very common error is to say day when we don't need a day. So lots of friends, beaucoup d'amis. Beaucoup des amis is going to mean lots of the friends, like we had earlier with that de and that les. So you can say lots of friends if you needed to say lots of the friends. So lots of the friends he made at college are now whatever. Goodness knows where they are. So beaucoup des amis. You can do that. But just he has lots of friends. Il a beaucoup d'amis. Yeah, so that is another common de problem that pops up there. Okay? This video is a little bit more weighted towards de problems than a problems. So let me think if there's any more a problems straight away. Yes, a couple more. I should have done separate videos. I told you this was a good one. So you don't need an a if you are using a verb of I always joke and call them persecution or perversion, but they are verbs of perception. So the verbs of perception, things like I've seen somebody doing something, I've heard somebody doing something, I've noticed somebody doing something. And if you just go to my channel and you type verbs of perception, these will come up. So if you say, I saw Nina, wash the car, j'ai vu Nina laver la voiture. J'ai vu. So you can do it both ways. I saw the dog eat. J'ai vu manger le chien. J'ai vu le chien manger. You can switch them round. The point is, in this situation, the point I'm trying to get to without just reteaching verbs of perception is you don't need an a. People always want to say, j'ai vu... I saw her eating, je l'ai vu à manger or something like that. And that comes from, if you said, I've spent the whole afternoon, j'ai passé toute l'après-midi à manger, there would be a chance you could use an a. Okay? So I've spent the whole afternoon doing it. You might want to say en train de le faire, in the process of doing it, but the, à le faire is another way of doing it. So therefore, don't confuse the two. If your verb is a verb of perception, like you're noticing someone doing something, hearing something, doing something, seeing someone doing something, you don't need the a. That is another little problem. So I might do a continued version of this for the moment, but these are just some good old reminders of basic de and a problems that we commonly face. Any more off the top of my head right now? I would probably do a ding ding volume 2 of this video. This is just for a couple of this is for those of you that kind of know most of the grammar, but this is just the common mistakes that we get with de and a. The most common one, if I'm really honest, is whether to use de and a in an impersonal statement, like il est facile de faire versus facile à faire. And we've spoken about how if the idea has come before, it will be a. Anything else right off the top of my head now? Common problems with de and a? No, I think this will do for now, volume 1. So if you have any specific de and a style common problems, then do please write underneath and we'll try and make it a bit of a de and an a workshop. But just to teach a whole video on every usage of de and a would just be mammoth. It would just be mammoth. It really would be like, God, I'd need several meals and an oxygen mask. It would just go on all day. So I hope this has been useful. Do click like. Remember that the podcasts are still available and we haven't got long left on the lockdown, so they are still on half price. So do get in touch if you're interested in the podcast and I will speak to you guys soon. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.